Welcome everyone, not only to the Young Turks, but the Young Turks on debate night, the first Democratic debate. Get ready, there's 500 candidates, 1,000 debates. We're gonna be here for the rest of our lives. I'm Iadarola, and not only is Brooke here, who was also my co-host just a couple days ago on the Damage Report, but Ashlee Marie Preston as well. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you here. I know you must be excited because the candidate you endorse is actually having her first debate tonight, yes. Elizabeth Warren.
Absolutely. I think that it is an exciting time for the debates, but I think it's a little unfair to the people that may be there because a candidate of Senator Warren's caliber is definitely going to wipe the stage, and
your expectations are high.
I'm not, I'm just saying the thing that we're all thinking, but like nobody wants to say because we don't want to repeat a 2016. So. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of people up there, and all of them have got to sort of break out, and we're gonna see what the different strategies are. I do wanna give you an idea of how not only the show is gonna go, because it's a non-traditional show, but also our coverage throughout the night, because I wasn't 100% joking that we're gonna be here for a very long time. We will be here for a while. This is the first debate night special, and our coverage is gonna start of the debates immediately after the debates, roughly 8 p.m. Pacific time, that's 11 Eastern. It'll go until at least 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 a.m. Eastern. And there will be a period at the end starting at 9:30 Pacific, that's 12:30 Eastern. Jesus, that's late. That's gonna be for members only. So if you're not already a member, you should go to tyt.com/join so that you can have uninterrupted coverage. There's a good chance, by the way, that Cenk Uygur is gonna be Skyping in to give us at some point his overall impressions of the first night. There's a good chance it'll be in that members only section, so you're gonna wanna be a member. We're gonna be covering the debate in 2 locations, here and in Miami. Here it's going to be Brooke, myself, and Mark Thompson. In Miami, we're gonna have Cenk Uygur, and we're also gonna have Anna and Emma Vigeland from Rebel HQ. That's gonna be, they're gonna be giving us their impressions of different sections of the debate too. Cenk is actually going to be roaming around the spin room floor, talking to candidates and trying to get interviews with them, get them on the record. And actually, right now, Revolution Rally is underway in Miami. And later on, we're actually going to be talking with Cenk in Miami in about a half an hour. He's there with TYT Army and some candidates. He's going to be telling us what's going on there. Actually, later on the show, we're going to have a short speech by Marianne Williamson, and there's a good chance Andrew Yang, we're gonna have a section of one of his speeches as well in the second hour. So that's a million things. I think I got it all.
I hope you caught one of them, okay?
Exactly.
It's a big day.
Yeah, lots to get to, So with that, I mean, we got a ton of stuff and more stuff. So we're just gonna jump into it, okay?
Let's do it.
Let's do that, okay. The situation at the border is a daily series of tragedies, and in many cases, these tragedies involve very large numbers of people being held, numbers of families being separated. But we've got a tragedy for you today that involves the number two individuals that we want to tell you about. One is Oscar Alberto Martinez Ramirez, who was frustrated because his family from El Salvador was unable to present themselves to US authorities and request asylum. So he chose to swim across the river on the border on Sunday with his daughter, Valeria. He set her on the US bank of the river and started back for his wife, Tania Vanessa Avalos. But seeing him move away, the girl threw herself into the waters. Martinez returned for her and was able to grab her, but the current swept them both away, and they both tragically died while trying to exercise their 100% legal right to apply for asylum in the United States. A right that has become increasingly difficult to exercise because of choices made by Donald Trump and his administration. We want to show you the picture to drive home how serious this tragedy is, but we want to warn you that this is obviously incredibly graphic. And with that warning, here's the photo that has been running since this morning. Those are 2 people who were fleeing horrific circumstances in their home country and just wanted to come to the United States because they believed, I hope not 100% falsely, that a better life potentially awaits them here. That has been the dream of the United States, if not the reality, for literally centuries. But now we have people in power that are trying to make sure that that is not the case. And so situations like this, while they can't be directly linked to any one action, are 100% natural consequences of the choices our country has made in terms of our immigration policy. Now, as sad as that image is, I want to show you one that in hindsight seems even sadder, a photo of the family together. Here you can see all 3, father, mother, and 2-year-old child as well. And think about if the situation had been differently, if we had been a little bit more inviting in this country, how much we could have been strengthened as a society by having those 3 beautiful people be a part of America. But we chose to go in a different direction in our country.
Yeah.
So sorry, obviously incredibly dark material, but that's the situation.
It's so much darker than even just the picture. I can't stop thinking about, this mom watched this happen.
Yeah.
And this little girl, drowning to death, drowning and like things like suffocating, like those have to be the most horrific, like slow deaths ever. And a 2-year-old, an almost 2-year-old, had to suffer that. And also, a part of this that I think is important about this story is that I was reading this, and a bunch of articles have it stated that the family was unable to apply for asylum. And so I started thinking why, and Dan actually found an article that had the information. They had gone to the bridge, and remember, we hear constantly this talk about you've got to go to the appropriate ports of entry. You have to do it the legal way. They did that, and guess what? They were told this port is closed, come back after the weekend.
Yeah.
And so they have nowhere to go. They're stuck in Mexico and they want to apply for asylum. So they were forced to swim. They were forced by the government that had the bridge that they're saying come to shut down.
Yeah.
It's what do you do? When someone tries to do it the way that you're asking for, and then you find a way to shut that down. This is horrible. And I wish that we didn't have to consistently see graphic images like that to care. Long time ago when somebody said, hey, this is bad, that's it. That's all it should have taken, because you should just care about humans. But it has to come to a point to where you have to shake people by showing them that. That's horrible. I think we're better than that. We should be.
I think it's about the point of entry and breaking through the apathy. My heart is absolutely broken every time I watch people demonize families for trying to provide better for their own.
Yeah.
You have to ask yourself what conditions are taking place on the land for a family with a child to deem the caution of the water as safer. And I think that these stories aren't new. I think the national conversation around these stories are definitely opening people's eyes up to the xenophobia and racism that exists in the United States. I had the pleasure and a joy of going down to the border when Trump and the administration met families seeking asylum with tear gas. And we went to Camp El Baratal, and we took diapers and food and medication and tents and anything they would possibly need to make that journey from Mexico into the United States a lot better. It's so difficult because this morning I was walking the dog, and there's 7 brown children who live next door, and they're all under 5 years old. And they came up to the dog and started playing with the dog. And one of them was telling me about his pet bird. And I went into the house and I immediately started bawling, because I don't see how people can see the babies here any different from the babies at the border. They all deserve a childhood. They all deserve better opportunities. They all deserve to live in safe conditions. And I think that when I see people, even like Nancy Pelosi, talk about, well, we'll try to work through this and we'll figure out a way. It's simple: impeachment. When we do not stand up for what's right, and when we do not exercise our social responsibility to stand up for not just all Americans, but all human beings who inhabit US soil and surrounding, we're supposed to be the world leader.
Yeah.
And I don't see that now.
Yeah, and instead we're allowing Donald Trump to have the policy he wants, and it necessitates these sorts of outcomes. When you tell people, as you pointed out, you have to go to ports of entry, even though you don't, that's not a legal requirement. You can go literally anywhere you want. They tell them that so that it's easier to deny them. Because now it's not just, oh, they got in, we have to hear them out. It's, we could just put up a gate here and then we're gonna turn them away. The policy is to force people to wait for weeks or months in Mexico. People who, I know you probably assume have tons of money, tons of resources. It turns out actually they don't. It's designed to cause them to lose hope and turn back. And if that means that some of them get robbed or assaulted or raped or murdered while they're waiting, That's how you make an omelet, I guess. That is the policy. The policy it's designed to create suffering, as we've pointed out.
And the vigilantes too. I'm so sorry. There's also, people aren't realizing, I heard this firsthand from some of the families seeking asylum in the US, that there are US vigilantes, people who are taking weapons and they're going into the desert, they're going near the border, they're hunting people who are seeking asylum. So many of these families, they're thinking, if we can get to that bridge or if we can get to the border, we have an opportunity. But they're also aware that there are people that are hunting their lives out there.
Yeah, absolutely. We already talked about, was it New Mexico or Arizona? The self-professed leader of the militia was arrested, and later were able to find out that the Border Patrol there was allowing it to happen, this behavior. They were kind of knowing what was going on, watching it, and just not doing anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, obviously this image incredibly, it affects you. You can't help it. But those are not the only individuals that have died in recent weeks. 2 babies, a toddler, and a woman were found dead in the sweltering heat. 3 children, an adult from Honduras died in April after their raft capsized on the Rio Grande. A 6-year-old from India was found dead early this month in Arizona, where temperatures routinely soar well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And we know that a number of children in our custody have died in facilities where there is literally no reason for them to die. So they're safer to some extent if they can get across the border and be taken by Border Patrol, but not necessarily out of the woods there. And although it is exhausting day after day to try to get, to tell people who have no empathy to feel empathy, and to tell people who refuse to use common sense to have it, and they will say, well, why are they doing this? Why are they risking, imagine doing something that could result in your 2-year-old daughter dying. But don't just say that, actually imagine it. What would the situation at home have to be to get you to do that? Do you really believe, does anyone seriously believe that, they just really want Social Security? That's why they're willing to see their children drown. They just want to take some of our resources. That's why they're willing to be victimized along the way for literally thousands of miles. No, people only leave when the situation is scarier at home. There's a poem, I saw a section someone had tweeted out where it's people only put their kids on boats if they fear the land more than the water. Yeah. They would not do this unless if they had any alternative, and they don't. And now they don't even have the natural alternative of being able to turn to the United States, the richest society in the history of humans, to help them.
And why are we pretending it only goes as far back as their family tree? When I see all of these wealthy white people talking about them coming over here and them creating problems and bringing diseases and bringing crime, all of England and Europe's most notorious criminals piled onto a boat, came over here, raped, pillaged, committed genocide, enslaved.
Yeah. The Italians. Yes, I agree.
And it just, I don't understand how we don't see history repeating itself, and how also we're not taking a look at the nuances here. I don't understand. There are no substantial facts around how immigration is harmful to the US. What it does show is an uptick in our economy. It does show that they have contributed, not just this year, not just last year, but for generations, for hundreds of years, they have contributed to the American economy. So I haven't heard anybody really talk about the harm.
Yeah. And it is important to know. Kids don't even want to leave their parents' home to go to college. Nobody wants to leave their home. Just thinking about how sad that is, how they don't want to leave their homes. They have to. And another part of this that just makes it awful is we do know how bad things are, that it's making them want to leave, need to leave, because we're the reason why things are so bad. Our history books are, our history books are, but.
The real history.
Right, we're the reason. This country is the reason why a lot of these countries are where they are now, or in the state they are now, why people are needing to flee them.
Yeah.
Because of something that we did.
Yeah, it's the international version of the sorts of policies that result in gated communities. Just to make these people suffer long enough, and eventually if we get enough guns and big enough walls, we probably won't have to deal with it, right? Now I want to give you the update as of today. There was effort in DC to try to put some money into this situation. And so the House and the Senate have both passed bills. The bills are not the same, however. We're talking about similar amounts of money. One is $4.5 billion, one is $4.6 billion. But the actual wording of the bills are very different in terms of how much leeway the Trump administration would have to use the money in the way that they want. Now, some members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the Congressional Progressive Caucus opposed the Senate bill that was passed, arguing it allows the administration too much leeway to spend the money on purposes they oppose. The bill passed Tuesday by the House includes stricter conditions on facilities that hold migrants and excludes money for the Defense Department and Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency contained in the Senate bill. Now, what was really interesting is the House version was almost in total party line. It was almost no crossover, Democrat to Republican, in terms of who voted for it. The Republican leadership of the Senate says that House bill is an obvious non-starter. And anyway, the restrictions that they put in there aren't necessary because we're only gonna use the money for the things that we say we're going to. Well, then why are you fighting against the legal requirement to do that? If you don't want to put this money secretly into building a wall or God knows what, why are you fighting against the requirement that you do what you say you're gonna do willingly?
Right, it's always like that. That's always the situation. No, we just don't want that written down. What?
We just oppose long bills,
right.
I guess. And so as of right now, we don't know. There's not that much time before a 10-day recess in DC. And so it's possible that they could do reconciliation between the two bills. It's possible that you could see the Senate or the House blink. Or it's possible that nothing could happen and the money doesn't get spent. Yeah. Okay, with that, we're gonna take a little break. We're gonna get ourselves together and we're gonna come back. And Emma Vigeland of Rebel HQ, she's been talking with some supporters of Elizabeth Warren at a big Elizabeth Warren rally in Miami. We're gonna show you some of that video, including some surprises after this.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you wanna get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Welcome back to the first hour of the Young Turks with me and Brooke and Ashlee. In just a little bit coming up, we're gonna have both Emma Vigeland and Cenk Uygur, who's gonna be coming to us live from the site of the debates. But first, did you know it's Member Appreciation Week? It's day 3, and on this particular day, the way that we would like to appreciate our TYT members is by providing for you free shipping on all orders at Shop TYT over $75. You can find more details and the special code for this one-day promotion at tyt.com/notice. And so, if you're gonna be doing like watch parties for the debates and stuff, you want a nice shirt to wear, maybe go to Shop TYT and save on shipping. We also had a lot of comments from members. I wanna read a few of them about the story that we talked about. Meg said, heartbreaking, such senseless deaths, shame on the United States. That is certainly the case. We're writing a dark history for ourselves right now that someday we're gonna have to teach our children. And some of us are fighting against it in every way that we can, but it is still happening. Rod said the US caused most of these problems in Central America and is now completely unwilling to be responsible for their guilt. The greatest country ever? And Stewart similarly said, I wish that the mainstream press would cover the actual conditions in places like El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. They need to show the gang violence, high murder rates, and the children being pressed into gangs. I feel like saying that the conditions in these countries are bad isn't enough. The problem is the people who don't find a more casual description of it to be convincing probably would not watch an actual in-depth explanation of it. And the only other thing I wanted to say was, I saw a little bit of Rush Limbaugh talking about that death and a little bit on Fox News about it, and it's all excuses. There's not even a brief acknowledgement that God, this is a tragedy. This is horrible. Not to mention the fact that literally every single one of the people on the right, on those sorts of shows consider themselves a good Christian, who cares about people, certainly cares about the lives of children, but they can't even stop to pretend that it bothers them that these people have died. It is instantly, explicitly political, partisan commentary. Yeah. No emotions, no values. Incredibly frustrating. Okay, with that, why don't we move to the topic of the day, and that is prep for the debates and what people are expecting. Rebel HQ's Emma Vigeland went to a rally by Elizabeth Warren. It's written wrong here. Elizabeth Warren had a rally yesterday in advance of today's debates, obviously, and Emma did what she did, which was get a feel for the room, the supporters. What do they actually want? What are they thinking? And here is some of what the big Warren supporters said.
Is Elizabeth Warren your #1 candidate, would you say?
I would say she's in my top 2.
Who's the other one? Can I guess? Is it Bernie Sanders?
No, not Bernie. Kamala Harris is my #2.
My alternative would probably be Kamala Harris. I kind of want to learn more about the other candidates. She's my second, and then I would say I want to learn more about Yang.
I think it comes back to the similar reasons why I was a big Hillary supporter. I was raised by a single mom, and I guess through the eyes of my mom, I kind of understood the the unfair struggles that women have to go through.
The 2016 election was so divisive and tore apart the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and that is part of the reason that we have Trump in the White House. And I just think that it's really time. It's just not the right time. We've got to get rid of Trump in power, and I don't believe that having Bernie in the mix is a good thing for the party.
A lot of people would say that Bernie Sanders is closest to Elizabeth Warren on policy. He's not in your top 3 considerations?
Just from what happened in like the previous, presidential run, I was for him for a while, but I feel that his values are a little too extreme for me.
Okay, so that's a few individuals. It's obviously not the same as doing a broad-based survey or anything like that. But Emma was obviously surprised by some of what these people were saying, and I guess people are different. But it seems like if you have a broad range of ideological positions, and some people are closer together, and some people are really far apart, you'd probably like in clusters. But not the case. Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, fairly interchangeable to some people. Nothing against those people. I understand that. Policy's not the only thing that people vote on. We don't do any vote shaming or anything, but I was surprised by some of those answers.
I'm not surprised. I think, what am I trying? I feel like I've been saying this for a long time. People who don't like a certain candidate aren't just stupid. They aren't just blind to what's going on around them, and
that. To be fair, that's exactly what I just said.
No, that's not what you said. I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you. But I'm trying to get to. I think this is where we get to this point: is that where you have 2 people who are similar, and a lot of people only like one, and then go all the way across the board to find their number 2.
Okay.
And the reason is that I think that there's too much time, almost like shaming those people instead of figuring out why I'm not connecting. Because you're right. If these 2 people are very similar, you should feel like, oh wow, look at this, I have a great option here, a second great option here. But instead they're like, okay, like this person, and then as far as okay, this is my second. And I'm not surprised. People have been saying that since 2014. So I don't know. I'm not surprised at all by this. There's a disconnect that is not being given enough attention, I think.
I'm kind of not surprised because I actually see Harris and Warren as 2 completely polar opposites. I feel that Harris is a bit more establishment. And whereas I feel that Warren's strategies are completely outside of the traditional box, and it's the very thing that's getting people excited about her candidacy. I know the last time I was here, I said something about Warren is what Bernie was in 2016, and I got crucified by both Bernie supporters and Warren supporters. And what I meant to
both.
Yeah, both of them. Like the Bernie supporters were like, yeah, right. Like she whatever straw man arguments they had. And then the Warren supporters were like, how could you compare her to him? And I think there's this race to see who's the most left and radical. And I think that both are very strong women. In fact, the thing that people don't think about is that Warren has a lot of relationships with some of these other candidates. In fact, Warren is the candidate that they would vote for if they weren't running, to be quite honest with you.
That's an interesting point, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
I guess look, we all come to the candidates from a different perspective. For me, like I mean, my front 2 are Bernie and Warren, and what consoles me about any one of the 2 losing, if they were to, and the other one were to win, is like the big ticket things that I want that they've proposed. I'll get a version of it from the other one for the most part. There's exceptions, and we'll get to that in just a second. But like if it was like, well, I love Bernie. And there's something about Buttigieg. I just really like Buttigieg. Okay, that's fine, but like if Bernie loses, I don't get really anything that I wanted out of Bernie with Buttigieg. You get other things, fine. I know there's Buttigieg. I don't want to get the Buttigieg squad on me or anything because there's a long list of candidates in this race already that if you say one negative thing about them, they will pillory you for the rest of your life.
Well, honestly, like if the Buttigieg squad, I think they're busy. I think they're busy trying to get their candidate to do something about the police-involved shooting back in his home state.
That's true.
They can't get on you. They're busy right now.
Okay, good. That's good to know.
But I think the other piece too is that like the thing is that we're gonna support whoever takes home the primary. So it's a lot easier to do that if you don't have to walk back all the crap you talked. And to be honest, if you have a candidate that's as strong as you say they are, their policies and their work is gonna speak for itself. So we don't have to take cheap shots.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will also say, we have constant discussions about toxic fandom, basically. Like, thankfully, a lot of it's not about politics. It's like, hey, a new Star Wars movie is coming, so get ready. Some of those fans are gonna get you. But like you saw a couple of those examples that Emma talked to, were turned off by what they felt was the base of a candidate. Now, I'm a gigantic Bernie Sanders supporter. I was one of the earliest people in media to talk about and support Bernie Sanders in that last election. And I think that a lot of what people think about the fandom was created early on by people that despise Bernie Sanders. I find the idea of the Bernie bro to be completely offensive and to totally misrepresent who actually supports him. But to the extent that any of our individual activity can make people a little bit more supportive of a candidate, or at least accepting if they were to win. It doesn't mean that they're gonna support them, but that they're not gonna fight them. We should do that. And that is not just a problem of Bernie Sanders. Don't make your candidate look like if they were to win, it would be a terrible thing because you personally as an ambassador for them are awful. Not just in politics, but in politics as well.
That's a good point. I just think that I don't think that it's just made up.
I'm not saying it's 100% made up, but I think that the concept of the Bernie bro, the idea that you can, with a term like that, just completely throw into the shadows a lot of people that do not fit that stereotype, I find to be offensive. And I definitely feel it was a designed thing. It was not some sort of organic thing. It was an attempt to make you feel bad if you supported this candidate.
I don't think so. I think it was a description of a lot of what they had been seeing. We talk in absolutes all the time, but no, we don't mean them.
I would need another example.
Like when someone says white people, you don't run around saying, but not me, not all white people, not me, not all men. You don't do that.
I'm having a hard time.
Generally like assume they're not talking about everybody. No one ever really is talking about everybody.
I think that the concept of the Bernie bro is designed to make you think that this is the prototypical supporter of this person, and I don't think that that's true.
I think it's a reaction.
And I think especially like
it's not going to change if you don't acknowledge though the truth.
I don't think that you can just say that it's just a reaction when the people who were pushing that initially, and you can see the first people that were using it in their articles and stuff were hardcore opposed to Bernie Sanders. They were not unbiased sources who were like, I like a lot of people, and whoa, this is toxic. It's like they really wanted him to fail. Like, anyway, I think that we're over, right? So we need to go to it. Can I get a confirmation? Okay, so we're waiting to see. We should be connecting with Cenk Uygur in just a little minute, and stay tuned. A little bit later on, we are. Okay, so we're gonna have a little bit more from Emma there. I would really like to see, what I found so surprising about that was the early polling of if you like X candidate, who's your second place. One of the most interesting things I saw there was the people who liked Bernie Sanders, a lot of them, their second choice was Biden, and a lot of the people that liked Biden, their second choice was Bernie Sanders, which I think
is sexism. And I honestly, I want to just say something that may not feel there is any substantial evidence around. We have to stop pretending like there isn't this idea that America must have a white man running the country in order for it to be run.
A lot of people only feel safe when that's what the story is. Yeah, for sure.
And the thing is, I think that we definitely are creatures of habit. And so the idea of a woman, or the idea of a member of the LGBTQ community, or an idea of a person of color, even post-Obama. In fact, we're still paying for Obama being president with this current one.
Through the cracks.
Yeah.
That is a big reason why we have Trump.
Yes.
A lot of those people who love to say, I voted for Obama, hated it after they did it.
And it just makes me cringe that the fact that, again, Elizabeth Warren, it isn't just about being a woman. And I told her to her face when I met her, I was like, you never could have paid me to think that I would live to see 2 black candidates and I vote for the white woman from Oklahoma. But it really wasn't about identity politics. It is about the fact that that woman from day one has been able to go to the work and go to the board and show her work. She speaks to all these issues. She spells it out. She doesn't rely on these cheap platitudes that we tend to do in political pageantry, but she is the ideal candidate, and yet she has to work 5 times, 10 times as hard to get an ounce of respect. And I think her sex has to do with that.
Okay, we're gonna return to that topic, but we do have Cenk Uygur in Miami joining us now to break down the situation ahead of the debates. Cenk, what's going on?
Hey, John, how you doing? We're live here in Miami, obviously. We got the TYT Army behind us. Okay. Bring it down. So there's a lot of different supporters and protesters and unions out here. You've got people trying to shut down what's happening in Homestead and a disaster. And over there is where they're going to have the debate at the Arts Center. And Anna and I have been in there already. We talked to some of the press, including Ed Henry from Fox News. He says hi to the TYT Army. Okay. And so we're pretty psyched about this whole affair. I love that these guys are out here, but I also love the spectacle inside. And I can't wait for the debate, and I'm pretty psyched about it. I want to hand it over to Anna for a second and get her point of view.
So I can't hear anyone in the LA studio, but I'm just going to quickly talk about how amazing this has been so far. Cenk and I landed just a few hours ago, and to see this type of political activism, obviously among our group here, is incredible, but everyone here is so energized, and it's really good to see. You see so many people wearing T-shirts representing progressive candidates, and you can really see how powerful, the progressive voice is at this particular event so far.
Yep. There are not a lot of supporters so far for more establishment or centrist candidates. John Delaney's got a couple of people out here, but outside of that, it appears to be more progressive supporters, which makes sense because they have more grassroots support.
Yeah, so that's sort of what I'm interested in. I mean, right now, as of the most recent polls I've seen, Joe Biden is still at like 25, 26%, which would imply, since he has the most support, he should have the most representation outside of a big debate like this. Have you seen anyone who's like, Biden, Biden?
Yeah, they're chanting like crazy out here, going status quo Joe, status quo Joe. No, there's not a single person for Biden here. And that makes sense because his support is super soft. It is people who generically know him and they know his name and they have good feelings towards Obama and Biden together, but they're not motivated to come out. Nobody's like, oh my God, I gotta make sure Joe Biden wins so that he'll take corporate donations from Republicans and Democrats, right? So the people in the streets are almost all progressive.
And so I know that you're planning on attempting to talk to some of the candidates later on. Anything in particular, we have to wait until we actually see the debate to know for sure, but anything in particular you wanna get some of these candidates on the record on?
Well, so some of the people who signed the pledge, like Marianne Williamson, are going to come talk to the TYT Army in a little bit. And Andrew Yang's going to come tomorrow, which is kind of amazing because he's got to do the debate tomorrow. So he's going to come out here right before he does the debate. When we're in the spin room later, obviously we want to ask them about the pledge for those who are still on the fence, whether it's people like Kamala Harris and Booker and Gillibrand who've said things that are aligned with the pledge, so I don't know why they wouldn't sign it unless they don't want to fight for those things. So we'll ask them. Then obviously there's the people who are not progressive, and that's okay. When I'm in the spin room, if I can get those candidates, I'm going to ask them tough questions about where they stand, and they should be proud of where they stand. Otherwise, they should switch their stance.
That seems to make sense. Has there been, outside of you said you had individual supporters of different progressive candidates, in terms of organized, like either like groups that are protesting outside of the debates? I know that the Sunrise Movement was planning on having a showing there. I'm hoping that much public pressure will put pressure on the moderators to ask questions about the climate crisis. Did you see any of that sort of organized showings?
So we walked around the block, and I have not. Sunrise is not supposed to be here. They did a protest in front of the DNC just the other day. About 100 of them showed up there to try to pressure them into a debate. And Tom Perez, who is here, said that he will not give in to that pressure, and he's not going to do a debate just on the climate crisis. Sunrise is planning to do a big movement in Detroit, so that's the next debate. But they skipped this one, so they don't have a presence here as far as I know. And Tom Perez came into the debate hall and says there's no candidates and nothing else to talk about. All the press gathered around him. And I talked to a reporter there, I don't want to name, but he peeled out and he said, man, things are really dull in the beginning, so everybody's excited to see Tom Perez. That's how dull it is in the beginning. Now that, mind you, that was like 4 or 5 hours before the debate.
Okay.
Hey, Cenk, so since we're here in LA, we're not out there seeing anything. Anything surprise you or shock you so far as what you've seen since you've been in Miami, or everything just looking good and kind of what you expect?
Yeah, I don't know what I expected. I'll ask Anna too, but so far I think I would have expected a little bit more candidate supporters here because of what we experienced in Iowa. In Iowa, there was arguably a lot more supporters, and that was a much smaller event. There seems to be more organized protesters, like from the unions, et cetera, than there are for the candidates. And outside of that, it's a great question, Brooke, because I feel like I'm trying to figure out, has it started yet or has it not yet started? Because it is like 2 hours and 20 minutes before the debate. So I don't know if all of a sudden, name a candidate, Klobuchar supporters are going to swarm here. Unlikely, but you never know. But so far, it's a little bit more subdued than I would have expected. Anna, what do you think about your expectations and what it is?
So I'm going to get to the politics in just a second, but it's so hot that I'm starting to understand why some people in Florida act the way they do. You know how like heat can make you like angry at times? But anyway, no, this has been, look, I can't compare it to Iowa because I wasn't in Iowa. So for me, this is like, wow, this is so electric, it's amazing. And it's been a really great, it's been great in my perspective so far. And I just love seeing how politically active people are. I don't remember seeing this in the last general election. You know, there was a lot of anger, there were a lot of conflicts, but there are people here who are just so passionate about not just the candidates, about the issues. So right in front of me, there's a wall. It's like a fence to make a point about the children that are being kept in the cages. And they have quotes of what the children have told the press. You know, one quote says, "I cried every day because I didn't want to be there." Like, it's just a really creative way of getting a message out. And I just like that they're focusing on the issues along with the candidates, because that's what really matters, the issues, the policies.
Yeah, and one more thing, guys. In 2016, when I was in front of the debates, it was really just two camps, obviously. It was Hillary and Bernie. And here, it's more bedlam, right? It's just a creative, chaotic mess, but in a kind of a fun and interesting way, because there's so many different candidates. And we should enjoy this while we have it, because the field is going to get winnowed pretty quickly, because less and less people are going to make the debates as we go on. So I like this creative mess that we're seeing here. And look, we got a big presence here, not just with the TYT Army, but as we walk through Beto supporters and Tulsi supporters and Warren supporters. Honestly, they all said hi, right? And so keep in mind that as sometimes we tweak some of the candidates because that's our job, we still got a lot of love in those communities. And so it's great to see Beto supporters so animated about the Young Turks. And so it's hard to see that unless you're in the field. And it's great to see it here.
Yeah.
So you guys want one chant before we go?
Yeah, let's hear
we
it.
do.
What do you got?
All right, they want a chant, guys. You guys ready? All right. What do we got? TYT sign the pledge? TYT sign the pledge. All right, go. You lead.
TYT sign the pledge. 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 TYT sign the pledge.
Okay, I'll sign it. Jeez.
You already
Thank you.
signed it.
Oh, wow, we cut out. Well, thank you. I don't know if they can still hear me, but if they can, thank you, Cenk, and thank you to everybody who showed up. You're gonna have a lot more opportunities with a lot more debates to continue to do that. And as Cenk pointed out, there's no good reason why a lot of these candidates won't sign the pledge when they say they support these things, but don't appear to want to put their name down on a piece of paper actually proving it. In any event, we do have to take a short break. We come back, more to get to after this.